everybody, my name is Leptys. Today I'm going to talk about one of my favorite CDH lists that I like to play at the moment. An Esper color deck helmed by Malcom, the Key Knight Navigator, as well as Tymna the Weaver. Those two partners form the Esper shell that I like to call as Tymna Turbotide. Tymna is in the command zone. Turbo is for the fast combo approach in terms of CDH archetypes, and Tide is for the card High Tide, which is one of my key pieces in the list. It's not a compulsory part of the deck, but I like to play it as such to give an extra piece of mana production into the deck. And because of High Tide, the deck also draws a lot of parallels with the 2016, 2015, 2016 era Zer Doomsday and Jelevite Doomsday decks that were also fast combo decks that utilized High Tides as one of their primary sources of mana production. Because of High Tide, the land base is quite different from other contemporary CDH lists. You play a lot of islands, basically, and a lot of basic islands. So around 11 basic islands are in the list, and out of all the 29 lands that I play, there's only around 4 to 5 functional non-islands. So all of the rest can basically get me an island on the field. And because there's no possibility of getting an, in terms of names, fully singleton list or singleton list, I cannot play Tainted Pact, but the deck does play Demonic Consultation plus Thassa's Oracle, because that's one of the most powerful 2-card combos in the format as we speak. And outside of Oracle Consult, the deck runs a couple of other 2-card combos, one of them being Hull Breacher plus any wheel effect, and the other is Opposition Agent plus Scheming Symmetry. This is, of course, assuming that Scheming Symmetry can get an Oracle and a Consult or something of similar power from your or your opponent's decks. Primarily from your opponent's, though, because you can then cast them immediately from Agent's Exile. Outside of like the regular wheels, Time Twister and Windfall, the deck also does play Time Spiral as part of the High Tide package that the deck has. High Tide usually gets more powerful when you can untap your lands, so the deck does play Time Spiral. It does also play Cloud of Fairies, Frantic Surge, as well as Candelabra of Tawnos, as these land untappers that give you basically humongous amounts of mana, as well as mana fixing when you have a High Tide active. Then we get to the main part of the win conditions. The 2-card combos are just there because they are so volatile that they work by themselves to slow the game down for your opponents. But the game plan is basically revolving around as many 1-card win buttons as possible. The main one is, of course, Ad Nauseam. It's hard to not disregard Ad Nauseam's power as the primary 1-card win button in the format. But there's also Peer into the Abyss. There's also the Time Spiral that I told you about. There's Yawgmoth's Will, Mnemonic Betrayal, as well as even Mind's Desire, as well as Bolas's Citadel. All of these cards might not win the game on the spot, but they are powerful enough to grant you a very high chance of winning the game if any of those resolve, especially when you have a High Tide active. So it's much akin to traditional Storm, especially on the Mind's Desire department, and all of these cards synergize with each other because you don't need any particular other combo piece. You just need cards and you just need mana. That is the core philosophy of Storm. Your whole deck is the combo, as long as you can resolve one of these spells. And yes, these spells are extremely expensive. High Tide, of course, helps, but you cannot rely on getting High Tide on each of your games. So the deck also is helmed by a very good source of mana production, that being Malcom, Key Knight Navigator. Malcom costs 2 and a blue, which is surprisingly easy to produce, even on turn 1, with cards like Jewel Lotus, Mana Crypt, Sol Ring and a Mox, and so forth. And basically this deck is playing Malcom almost every game on turn 1 and turn 2, and then starts producing treasures for turn 3 and turn 4, allowing you to go for these expensive 1-card win buttons. And the deck also does run Diabolic Intent and Calling the Weak, which is pretty weird because it only runs around 8 creatures, but they are basically in because the deck plays Malcom almost every game, so you almost always have a fodder for one of those spells. But in case that doesn't happen, you cannot play Malcom, or you just don't wanna. The deck does run Memnite, Cloud of Fairies that I spoke to you about, Bloodbet, as well as Overeager Apprentice, and Dark Confidant as well, to basically give the final quarter of games that you don't want to play Malcom in a way to utilize those Calling the Weaks and Diabolic Intents to get yourself a game-winning combo piece. So yeah, that's basically my win cards and combos, and there's basically a lot of them. There's around 9 to 10 pieces of interaction, and one of the maybe standouts being Mana Drain, because many decks have cut it recently, but one of the homes that Mana Drain still has are essentially these decks that can play a lot of islands or have a lot of blue sources in their disposal to be able to ramp even more thanks to the high CMC spells, or not thanks to them, but to utilize those high CMC spells that you have in your deck. But yes, that was my deck in a nutshell. I hope you enjoyed this small introduction to the list, and I hope I see you guys at Tier1Con, where I can show you this deck in practice and how it works. See you then. Bye bye.